Hello everyone, in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to paint this scene. This is a scene of beautiful colored houses in County Cork. That's Cobh. Okay, now if you see, my drawing here is nice and dark. I have used my edible pen, that's by Fractal here, but you could use any pen that is edible. Now this pen has kind of a brush tip here, so you can just go over in your drawing. It's not thin, not thick kind of pen, so even if you want to fill in with this, you could use that. If you don't want to use this kind of pen, there is a pen that has two different ends. One is a thicker end like this, the brush one, and the other would be a pointy bit where you could just have fine lines with it. Now, whatever kind of pen you choose to draw, it's completely up to you. So I draw directly with this pen onto my cakes. Now I'm good at drawing, but need not be that you would be confident enough to draw. Sometimes if you're not confident enough, what I would suggest is use a tracing paper like this, which has drawing on both the ends. Place it on your cake and use a sharp needle tool just to go over it. So when you place that on your cake, use two toothpicks or pins just to hold your sheet and then draw over. Now for me, this is faster, drawing directly on cakes. So I stick to this method of doing drawings on my cakes. That's what I am popular for. Okay, so let's get started. Again, as I always say, different shapes, sizes, and numbers of your brushes. Your palette. Now this is my metal palette, my tea light candle holder, and I have my cocoa butter. That's by Saracino. You can use any brand of cocoa butter. The first step that I would start doing is by lighting my tea light candle and placing my palette over and popping the cocoa butter. Now I will be putting in my dust colors in here. They would be the edible dust colors. For a detailed video of how I do this, please watch my video where I just show how you paint on cakes using cocoa butter. So let's get started with the painting. Let's pop all our dust colors in here. This is red. You can see my cocoa butter has melted. It just takes a couple of minutes to melt. Orange. Turquoise blue. And some lime green. Lastly, I will take some white. Now give them a quick mix. And let's start painting. Now I would also take up some black mixed with white to make some gray, and some of my regular colors that I would need, like browns and stuff like that. You know, all the earthy colors, I would say. So different shades of browns, different shades of greens and blues and whites. I'm starting with my blue for this house here. and paint it. So what I usually do is, when I take the blue, I would add a small bit of white into it, so that I have two different hues of the same blue, that is the light and the dark shade. Now this will help me to blend and get that shaded effect. So this is kind of a base coat of light blue, and then using the same brush and taking some dark blue, just go on the sides. Now with your dry brush, just blend it. You could also just go with your regular light blue shade if you don't want blending, or if you don't want a complicated painting. Like this. And then a bit around the door and the window. Now the first one, I will be going with light green. Same thing. Just go around and then take your dark green for that bit of shading around it. Now this house with lemon yellow. Now when you draw using your edible pens, they act as your outlines or borders there. So it's up to you. Do you want to keep those outlines, or do you want to blend them with your colors? And you can decide that even later. So you can just keep it, think what looks good there, and then you can blend it if you don't like, those borders or outlines. Now whenever I have my demonstrations or tutorials, especially the online tutorials, I prefer drawing using those pens because it's quite visible in the camera. Otherwise, if I'm using my needle tool, it's very difficult for you all to see what I have drawn. And then taking that darker shade and blending. So for the next house, let's go with pink. These houses look really beautiful in real life. If you go down to Cobh for a walk in Cobh, they are so bright and colorful, especially on a sunny day. And then take some dark pink. I'm going over that black line there. And then using your dry brush, just blend it. So I'll finish this and then we'll go with the next color. So this time I'm going with white. And the next one, let's paint red. So this red is called burning red. It's nice and bright. You could buy cherry reds, burning reds, or blood reds. They are really nice and vibrant shades of red. For this house, I'm going with orange. I'm using blue once again. So the houses are, kind of going smaller and smaller because it's that kind of an angle where you're looking at the street from the far end there. And make sure you clean your brush by dipping it into the cocoa butter so that you don't get that leftover paint from the other colors out there. So dip it in your cocoa butter and give it a quick wipe each time you move on to a new color. Just the way you clean your brushes with your oil paints. It's exactly similar to that. So I painted light green for that house and a lighter shade of orange. For this one here. Now since they're really tiny, If you want to use a thinner brush or a smaller brush, you could always switch from one brush to the other. Now for the windows, take some light gray and paint the inside. For the door, you could use a contrast color. I am going to use red for the door. Clean your brush nicely, especially if you're going to use white. So we are going to use white now. A lot of times people ask me what the consistency of the paint should be. So the ratio is 1:1. So your dust, if it's 1 spoon, 1 tiny spoon, your cocoa butter is the same. So for example, if it's 2 grams of your dust, your cocoa butter should be 2 grams. That gives you the consistency that wouldn't fall from your brush. So how you check is just dip your brush in the paint and it should not drip. That is the consistency that we are looking for. Now take some white and go around the windows. So my windows here have that white frame. You could paint whatever color you want, but I'm going to stick to the colors of what I have seen in Cobh, and they are pretty much white frames. Now around the door. And then those lines. So when I'm painting, I'm not resting my hands on my cake. This is very important when you're painting. The exact rule of painting on your easel or your oil paints, you don't rest your hands on your board. Teeny tiny bit of your fingers that you would rest on the cake like this if you want, and then just go around. You're not resting or putting that complete weight onto your cakes. Otherwise, you are going to smudge the painting, plus you're going to have fingerprints all over your cake. So I am going to finish these frames in white and grey, exactly like this, until I move on to the White House, where I'm going to paint the frame in black because the house is white. So let me finish this bit and then we'll move on to the roof. So this door here, I'm going to paint orange. And I'm also going to paint this portion here in orange. That's the roof over that window. So as you can see, each window, they have different kinds of windows, I would say, although the frames would be quite similar, or the size, dimensions would be the same. They would have slightly different designs. So that's what I'm doing. I'm giving different kinds of windows for each house so that they look a little different. If you want to go with more kind of miniature painting, if you like doing that and spending more time doing miniature paintings, you could even do curtains inside those windows there, those frames. So let your cocoa butter dry for some time and then you could do those curtains. Now, let's paint our doors. So the blue one, I am thinking of going with a deep red, sort of brown door. And for the pink one, maybe let's go with a green door. And for the white one, let's go with the pink door. Now when you're painting this, it's going to be black frames. Now, if you are not confident enough in your painting and you think you haven't liked something or if you have smudged, you can always use a scraper. Let your cocoa butter dry for some time. Use a scraper and scrape off that cocoa butter there. Go with your base coat again and you can paint it all over again. So similarly, I'm going to finish painting the rest of my doors and windows. You can see how it makes a difference when you paint your doors and windows. It gives kind of a dimension. So I'll finish this bit here and then we'll move on to the next. Okay, so here it is. I have painted all the doors and windows there, and now I'll show you how you need to paint the roof. It's pretty simple with the roof as well. So take some gray, and a bit of dark gray. So use the same brush. You need not clean it. When you do something like this and you keep the paint and the brush, you get that kind of shading. And on the sides. So now when you can't rest your hand on the cake, you would hold your hand, your wrist, with the other hand. And then paint. That gives you kind of stability in your painting. So this is my first roof here. For the second one, I'm going to go with black. And then a bit of grey in the same brush. Blend it. Similarly, the other side. Now the next one, go with grey, Take some dark green, the same brush. And then blend it. So I'm going to use a dry brush here for blending it. Take some black. Same thing on the all other roofs out here. So I'm going to finish doing these roofs and then we'll move on to the other finer details. So this is how I've painted all the roof here. Now just let's add some finer details. So not every house, but some of the houses you could just go with a little bit of white. This way. On the edges. So you can choose which house you want, with the edging. If you want all the houses with the edging, you could do that. You could do alternate. It's completely up to you. I think it just adds that bit of detail there and it looks good. So just randomly you could do on few houses. I might do it on the red one here. Like this, and maybe even on the orange one. Like so. You could also use some brown for some of them and just go with some highlights on the edges. I might go with a bit of brown here as well. And some brown on the green one here. and on this one here, maybe. There we are. Now moving on to painting this beautiful cathedral out there. So we are going to start with a light grey. Rest your finger gently on your cake and so this cake here is basically a double barrel cake that I made. It's 2 of the chocolate cake layers there and then 1 vanilla cake. So you can see that line here where the chocolate and vanilla mixes, which obviously I'm going to cover while painting. So that doesn't matter. So I'm just going with that light grey shade and then picking a bit of dark grey blend that with light grey. Take some black and doing the cross there. So if you want, and if you have a steady hand, you could use the same brush and outline these bits with your brush. But if you're not confident enough to do it that way, you could even use your edible pens. So basically, you could just paint the in-betweens, and when it's nice and dry, once again just go over with your edible pen there. Now when you are using your edible pens over cocoa butter, at times it wouldn't work. So in this kind of situation, what I would recommend is outlining it like this and just leaving it. I'm going to show you how you would do that in a moment. So something like this, where you're painting the insides and still using the outer lines as your highlighters there. So you're not going over those lines with your cocoa butter. I'm using a bit of white here in the same brush so that it gives me that light gray effect. As I said, just go in between without smudging any of those lines. That would be the easiest way to paint tiny designs or complicated designs. I'm just showing both the ways. So I'm not cleaning my brush here. I'm just going over with the same brush. So what's happening is I'm having different hues of grays. At times they are darker and lighter. So you could alternate your colors there. You could go with a bit of gray, a bit of white, and some black. So this, once you've outlined, this is pretty easy and quick. You're just filling the inner bits there. Moving on to these portions here. Let's paint this window. And once again, with your light gray. When this is painted, it looks so complicated. People would think how you did that, but it's pretty easy if you're using your edible pens, highlighting everything, and then just going over. So using a mix of different grays, you can create that 3D effect. wherever you get a scope, just, you know, use a bit of shading there. Similarly this end. So I'm going to paint around those dots, and with my brush I'm going to get those dots back. Trust me, it looks complicated, but it's very easy. So I'm going to finish painting this end here, and then you can see there are two houses that I'm going to paint as well, the same way as I painted these houses. And then I'm going to show you how we would do the sky and a bit of the scenery, like the greens and everything else. Okay, I have completed painting everything out here, and if you see, I have used a bit of brown for the doors just to highlight that and, you know, give that wooden door effect out there. The houses back here are just in white and grey. Now let's begin with the sky part here. What I'm going to do is, it's the same blue that I have here plus a bit of dark blue and white to begin. I'm going to use the same colors that I had in my palette, the yellows and oranges a bit, with some pink hues maybe. So let's see how we progress with the sky. Whenever I paint the sky, it's usually various shades of blues, hues of blues. So I begin with a light blue, and I'm going to add some cocoa butter. So now what I'm going to do is, my paint needs to be thinner than what it was. So the consistency should be slightly watery, so that we are giving, you know, kind of a wash, I would say. Now I'm using a thick brush. I might just go with a thicker brush here so that it's faster. Now this is a flat brush with rounded ends there. So just go with your light blue. And what I would do is use some white, use some blue in the same brush so that you have those different shades that you would see in the sky. Now, don't go very close to this because we would be doing that with a thinner brush. You know, we would just go outlining everything and then paint. So, paint everything that's around there. So I'm showing you one side of the cake here. Now as you're going closer to your painting out there, just be very careful. While I'm painting, if you have noticed, I'm using horizontal strokes here. So make sure you consistently go with your horizontal strokes. Now, what I'm going to do is take some orange and blend it. Now, because the consistency of my paint here is thinner than usual, it's going to take longer for it to dry, and hence the blending is easier. So whenever you're coloring or painting a larger portion, the proportions of your oils should be more. Just for that very reason. I'm taking some pink and blending it as well. Some strokes of pink here and there. Up here. Now let's move on to a thinner brush. And grab your blue once again. Very carefully paint around. And then blend it with the rest. So for blending again, use your thicker brush. Now I'm going to go with slightly darker blue. Around. and then blend it. Now so you can see how you are having those different shades and hues in the sky. Once this thing is all nice and dry, I will show you how you could do your clouds as well. But at the moment, let's finish doing this. So gently go around and with your brush. Now if your brush is drying out the cocoa butter in it, just place it on your palette and melt your cocoa butter. Keep blending it. Now I'm going to take slightly darker blue out here. So I have two different shades of blue for my sky. One is the lighter blue and the other one is sort of the dark navy blue, which I'm blending with my light blue. I'm getting different shades of blue here. This way and blend it. So now I'm going to finish doing this bit here. Now this bit here, again, go with your dark blue. Similarly out here. Now take some light blue. Once you're happy with it, place your brush on your palette just so that the cocoa butter in it is melted, and that might help you in blending, because if your brush is there for a while, you know, the cocoa butter in it would have hardened. So it's easier if you give it a quick dip in the cocoa butter or just rest it on your palette there to melt the cocoa butter that's settled on your brush. Blend that blue with the background. Now there is one important tip that I would give you, that is, as I said, I'm using more of my cocoa butter here so that my paint doesn't dry, because this is a larger area that we are painting. If it dries, or if it's too cold, your room is too cold, or if you feel that it's drying out, because sometimes what happens is, now my cake here is at room temperature, but if you have taken your cake out from the refrigerator, the ganache in there is going to be cold enough. And when you're painting, it's going to dry out your cocoa butter even faster than what it would usually do. So in that case, make sure you're using thinner paints by using more amount of cocoa butter in it. And if it's chipping off, it means you need to add more cocoa butter there. So ideally, I would say rest your cake at room temperature for around 2 hours before you start painting. So this end here, again, I'm doing the same thing as I did here. So exactly the same thing. Now, starting with the whites. So the lightest shade of my blue here that I'm going with. And then my blue. So I can easily go with my blue here. The reason being, there is no obstacle here, so I can just go with my blue. And my light blue. So here I'm giving some vertical strokes just because I want to blend that blue in with my brush, and then once everything is blended, I'm going to turn my brush and get into those horizontal strokes once again. Now just give a quick clean and some orange. Just go gently over it. Now don't use too much of that orange color, because if you do that, it's going to start looking greenish rather than, that orange pink sky. And then take some blue and keep painting. Blend it well. So, okay, now let's finish this bit here before we move on to the next steps. Going with my blue again. And some strokes of a darker shade of blue here. Similarly, some dark blue strokes here. So now we want some clouds, and that's the reason we are giving these dark blue strokes here and there. Let's quickly finish this end. Moving on to my orange. And then in the same brush, some pink. Once again, take some blue using your thinner brush. Go around. And then blend it with your thicker brush. So you could even go darker than this if you want to show like the evening sky. You could go darker than this. But whenever you start with your lighter tones and then move on to the darker shades. And this corner here. Blend it. Now what you're going to do is clean your brush a bit. I have always shown how you could clean your brushes in my previous tutorials. So just dip your brushes in pure cocoa butter or just place it on your palette there and give it a quick melt. So whatever cocoa butter is in your brush, that would melt. And then what we are going to do is just gently same thing here. And then now I will do one here maybe. And then just lightly go around with smaller clouds. Similarly, one out here. And it could continue on the other end. Like this. So you could go with as many number of clouds you want in your sky there. So I've taken some dark blue here and I'm going to go around just beside this one. Like this. Now this is when you want to create a dimension in the clouds itself. So basically one cloud overlapping the other. even more darker here, a tiny bit now. Clean your brush with your dry brush. Just go around. Now take some white and go over it. So this gives kind of a dimension to your clouds. You could even use a bit of gray to show those gray clouds. And then white cloud again over it. Now with your dry brush, just go around so basically I had dipped my brush in my dark blue and I gave it a quick wipe, but it still has a lot of blue in it, so that's my dry brush that I call my dry brush. So around your clouds. Again, I've dipped it in my blue. Similarly out here. So that kind of, highlights your clouds there. Small amount of blue around this cloud. And blending it. So what I'm going to do is finish painting this cake all around with my sky, and then we'll do the top and the grass. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to do the grass first and then perhaps paint the rest. Okay, so this portion here, now if you have been to Cobh, there is water down here. So that's what I'm going to paint. Now let's draw one line here and some light blue around. From here until this portion here. Take some navy blue in between here. Now again, if you want to learn something related to water, I have a beautiful swan tutorial on my website where I show how to paint swans in the water, and it's a beautiful tutorial even for beginners, so do have a look there. And this is my light blue just over it. Clean your brush, just wipe it well, and then blend it with your white. So this is kind of a base coat that we have given. Now again, take white and just run through the edges. So take good amount of white in your brush, and then once again clean your brush, and with your dry brush blend everything. Don't give a good big rub there, just gently around it. Now let this dry for maybe a couple of minutes. After a couple of minutes, just go over with white once again. Just a bit here and there. Now with your thin brush, just go with some lines in there using some dark blue. Clean your brush and then dip your brush into greens. This is my light green, so just a bit of light green to begin with. And same thing out here. Around. Go around this end with your light green. Clean your brush and just slightly blend it with the white in the water there. Especially around these edges here. Now take some dark green in that brush and go around. Dip the same brush in your light green so that your brush has like two different shades in that when you are painting. And similarly here. Something like this. Let's give a background wash kind of for this particular area here, and then with your greens some brown. Rub your brush. So once again, let's finish the rest. Give a base coat of light green. In the same brush, just pick some dark green and go around like this. This is fun part, I would say. I just love doing the greenery around and playing with colors. Then go with your darkest green. Mix it with some light green. Just keep going. So when you reach the edge, make sure you're painting right in there so that you don't have any pockets left that are unpainted. And then some brown. In between here and there. Now take your thin brush. Now let's paint this cap here. So give a base coat of your dark green and just with your darkest green, just go for the foliage there. Okay, now let's do this bit here. With your flat brush, go with your medium green. Your light green. And your dark green. What you could also do is with your thin brush, you could just go with tiny little dots. So that it looks even more finer. Now in that same brush, I'm going to take some brown just a little bit. Clean your brush and take some gray. So that's kind of the road. And then slightly lighter gray. Clean your brush, blend it. Then go with your green over it, here and there. So in that same brush, I'm just picking up a bit of green and brown. And then just this bit here that's left. So our base coat green, clean your brush, pick some gray. Flat brushes are really good for painting these kind of paintings, you know, especially any of the architectural paintings. They help you create those straight lines, you know, when you're painting. Now this side here, you could use a whiter brush for this. Now just go over that house a bit to show as if that tree is going over and around a bit. Take some brown, just show some branches with that. So I'm going to continue doing that around here, and then we'll start painting this end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the sea around this end here. The Cobh harbor is quite famous, so I'm going to do this with the blues and painting all the water there. Now let's go with some brown. And mix it with green. So go all around your cake base there with brown and keep mixing it with some green. In the same brush, take some light green and start blending it. Clean your brush, just give it a quick wipe there and take some light blue in your brush. And go around. Just go all around. Now, this bit here, in that same brush, just add a bit of light green and go in a circular motion like this. Take some dark blue on the edges and blend it like this. Now let's grab some dark blue and go around the edges. So once you take the paint in your brush, it's enough to go for a while. So as you can see, I start with putting all my paint on the edges. Just dusting kind of with a bit of light blue. So this is how it would look like with that water effect on the base. We'll finish this edging using a matching ribbon. And now let's move on to the top of the cake. So the top tier is pretty straightforward. Just go with your light blue. Now it depends on how you want the top tier to be. If you have anything going on the top tier like a cake topper or something, you could just go with a light blue base coat, or else you could just, write something like a happy birthday message or something like that. But if you don't have anything going on top tier and you want it all painted, you could just go with the sky effect that we have been doing around there. So you could go with some clouds and the same kind of, the orange and the pink effect. So I'm going to show you how you could get that here, the orange and the pink sky. So basically I'm going to go in a circular motion here. So what I would do is the light blue on the edges, and then I would just paint a bit of orange and pink coming into the center there. Just for the cake to look a bit colorful, You could even do some flying birds. In that same brush, it's exactly the same thing that we did on the sides. I'm taking some orange And remember, the consistency here is slightly thinner than it would be for the general painting that we did. Any base coat or background, you should have slightly thinner consistency so that the brush moves nice and smooth. It should glide when you're painting. You can see how quickly I could paint this background here. So that is something that we are aiming for. Again, in the same brush, I haven't cleansed my brush because I want that kind of graduation of that pink and orange. So the leftover orange mixes with my pink and it gives a bit of that in-between shade when I'm painting here. Mix it and just go with your pink. Now you could go with your light blue again or just stick to your pink. I'm going to go with my light blue. And blend it. So this is how we would paint our top tier, or the top of the cake. Now I'm going to do some clouds, but as I said, if you're writing a message or you have things going on top tier here, you need not do that. I'm going to show you how you do your clouds. So I'm going to go around with few clouds here and there. And with your dry brush, just go around that cloud. To highlight it. So I might just do a couple of more clouds and then we are done with our cake.